the 2020 field of Democratic candidates who, by and large, are championing a lot of her messages while disagreeing over some specifics here. White House Writers Group Consulting Director Sabrina Schaeffer here, former Bush 43 Deputy Assistant Brad Blakeman, and progressive commentator Rashad Richey. Rashad, ending with you, is her view typical of the Democratic presidential pact? Some will argue over, the details of a green spending plan, what have you, but by and large, they seem to support the big spending plans. Or am I missing something?
Yeah, I think you're missing something here, Neil. They do not support huge spending plans because nobody has proposed any methodology or implementation for spending. In addition to that, Congresswoman Cortez is a congressional district representative, which means she actually campaigned on these same issues that she's pushing. I think she has political integrity to do that. And there are many folks who actually disagree with President Trump, but they are supportive of the fact, or they at least respect the fact, that he was bold enough to try to keep campaign promises, something that this district representative is doing as well. So I think she has a level of political integrity, and I think it's quite refreshing to see somebody get elected based on the platform, get to Congress, and actually try to push that same platform.
Well, you might be right about that, but I don't know whether all the prominent candidates are departing from her on this. By and large, they agree with the Green Initiative. They agree with some of the things that she has been espousing. They're offering everything from a higher rate on rich folks to, a wealth tax and what have you, upping the estate tax. So, Sabrina Schaeffer, I guess my question for you would be whether she is bigger than her congressional seat would imply. That she is, I think, to Rashad's point, very honest in her approach. She's doing everything she said she would. There's nothing new in this, but that this is spreading.
Right. No, she certainly represents a growing cohort on the left of sort of this democratic socialism that I don't think represents all Democrats, but it's certainly a growing segment of the party. And I think what's interesting is, she's sort of a symptom, much the way Trump is, right? There are a lot of people, while America remains a wonderful place with, the land of opportunity, but a lot of people who look at basic things like rising education costs, rising healthcare costs, rising housing costs as real challenges. What they don't understand, and where the disconnect is that government intervention is what skewed those marketplaces. And the last thing we want to do is inject more government. And I think that's where Cortez needs to spend a little bit more time sort of studying her economics, studying her political history, and realizing that what we want to do is roll back that sort of crony capitalism, roll back that favoritism, regulatory favoritism, tax favoritism, subsidies, and make sure that we have a more even playing field so that more people can achieve the lifestyle that they want, whether it's to be a billionaire or just to be sort of an average middle-class American.
Brad, I think Republicans sort of dismiss her to their detriment, though. And I think that the passion she generates, and I don't know whether that will extend to voters in 2020, it's clearly palpable within the Democratic Party. And I can understand, Republicans sort of waving and dismissing this. But I can also remember Democrats when they waved and dismissed the prospect of a Ronald Reagan becoming the Republican nominee because they thought he was too crazy to get elected president. He gets elected in a landslide. So I'm wondering if Republicans are sniffing too much. What do you think?
No, we shouldn't take her for granted. Look at the popularity she has beyond her district. She's one of 435 in a district that's supposed to represent 700,000, yet she's on a speaking tour all over the country pressing these very progressive socialist ideas that are actually being well received. I remember a time, Neil, not too long ago, maybe you do too, where if you called a Democrat a socialist, you were defaming them. Now they get angry if you don't call them that. And they're trying to outdo each other. Completely eliminating the private health care market. Kamala Harris dismissed it and said we have to get over it. And making a green economy that is not competitive, but actually confiscatory in our country just doesn't make sense. Now, Rashad should know they're talking big, and he's right. They just haven't told us how they're going to pay for it.
All right, but Rashad, let me ask you, we're getting reports that Hillary Clinton has been advising Joe Biden. We don't know others, but that's a clear sign as any that maybe she's not entering the race, but she's not embracing some of the firebrands who are already in the race. What do you make of that?
Well, I make that you will either have a Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden say they're running for president. I make that prediction today. In addition to that, Neil, there's a diversity in the Democratic Party that really should be celebrated. Yes, you have Congresswoman Cortez, who represents some pretty extreme ideological values, but you still have gatekeepers and old guards like Joe Biden, who are very popular even amongst the activist class of Democratic voters, because he's polling at #1 in virtually every poll if he throws his hat in the ring. So I think diversity is good. It's really American to be diverse. And you're seeing right now the natural progression of a robust and vigorous Democratic primary starting.
All right. It's going to be a crowded one, Sabrina. Who resonates, do you think, in the end?
Well, you know, I hope that we can run to the middle a little bit, as both parties have clearly run to their sort of outer limits. But one thing that I hope Republicans are paying attention to is that someone like Representative Cortez is, you know, attracting a ton of attention, especially among younger voters and especially among women voters. Yet instead of just complaining about Cortez, they ought to be putting more female Republicans up there who sort of stand for fiscal responsibility and economic growth, and who can also resonate with a different cohort of voters. And so that we can have a real debate instead of all women who are now entering Congress being wildly progressive. I think that there's way too much room. We need less complaining and more action.
All right. That'll never fly, by the way. But seriously, guys, I want to thank you all very, very much.